Alrighty, it looks like everything is good to go and I can be heard. So I'm going to jump right into it. I hope everybody is having a great evening, night, morning, whatever it is, wherever you are. I hope it is a good time at the moment. But anywho, so of course, today's live stream will be about the ambiguity of identity and exploring the experiences of racially ambiguous, or as I like to say, racially undefinable people. So this has been a topic I've been wanting to discuss for a while. And I've just been looking for, different medias or tweets or whatever to respond to to talk about this topic. So, just going to give it like a second, get my notes together, and then we'll hop right into it. Hopefully, the mic sounds good. I got some new equipment and everything, and I'm working on the Wi Fi situation because I really want to apologize about how ratchet the sound was in my Ice Spice and Clear Trap Alive. Like, I was like embarrassed to sound like I recorded on a 1998 stereo. Like, I just can't. It's because I'm in the lower level of like my complex. So it's like, yeah, you know how that is. So I'm working on that situation. So hopefully today it's better because I've done some tweaks for that to be the case. And if not, I'll just connect it to my phone Wi-Fi or LTE or whatever, which I don't want to have to do, but it is what it is because that shit was ridiculous last week or whenever I did that stream. But anyway, so as you can see, like I said, we will be discussing the racially ambiguous experience in the West. So just give me a second. I'll get my notes together and then we'll hop right into it. Okay, so just like starting out the stream, I first want to kind of get into like why it took me like a while to even like discuss this topic and to like even feel like confident in talking about it, because even though I do have like a lot of things that I've like witnessed and experienced between like seeing interactions that my family members have had, or people I grew up with, friends, people in my neighborhood, whatever, just people that was just around me growing up, who were what would be considered quote unquote racially ambiguous or whatever. So I do have like experience in observation of that worldview or lived experience, but I always kind of felt like because that wasn't necessarily my experience, I didn't really feel like almost qualified to talk about it, or like I didn't want to just speculate or just like be projecting my interpretation of it like onto a topic or something. So if it ever seems like it's a topic pertaining to like mixed light skin people that I'm not touching on or haven't addressed, or something that I touch on and address all the time, it's usually because I have a personal lived experience with that. And so I can speak, off the dome with it. And I'm like, I'm speaking with it from confidence because I have experience with it. As where if it's something I don't touch on that much or I never really brought up on my channel, that's probably why. It's not that I usually don't have an opinion on it. It's just I try to be very careful um with like kind of if it's an experience that I am speculative of, just that I haven't, meaning that I haven't experienced myself, I can be empathetic or I can speak in defense of that person just in a human way or from an empathetic standpoint. But it's harder for me to speak confidently about it. So I kind of didn't want to, like, this is gonna sound might sound bad, but like I kind of didn't want to like blackify like the narrative of like racially ambiguous people, because I feel like a lot of the times, like, I just got to be honest with you, black women specifically, we tend to like hold a lot of space and dominate conversations about mixedness, colorism, interracial relationships, all that stuff just in general. And like the narrative becomes our narrative, and that becomes the narrative that cannot be like challenged or like questioned at all. And I'm saying this as a black woman, like, even if I'm like highly admixed or not or whatever, like, you know, on paper, I'm a freaking black woman. So I know I was raised by a black woman, admixed or not, So I know. So I've definitely observed that. So I'm kind of, even when I'm doing these topics, even though I speak from the mixed perspective as well, and like I do have confidence speaking on that, I am aware of that as well. So sometimes I'm like cautious, like, I have my perspective on stuff, but I may not indulge too much because it's just like, I kind of don't want to like maybe speak for a group I'm not a part of or speak for an experience I haven't necessarily had myself. It's that type of thing. And it's in a respect type of thing, not in like a I'm trying to, be disregarding type of thing. But I have been wanting to talk about this topic for a while because like I said, I do have family members and a lot of people in my life and that I grew up with that were racially undefinable, and I'm going to get into what I mean by that in a second. But so I do have like strong opinions on that, especially how like they're talked about online and when it comes to like the skin tone politics and stuff like that. So I have always had like strong opinions on it. I was just looking for like ways to incorporate it into a topic that I felt comfortable speaking with. And this was honestly supposed to be one live, and then I was just doing research for it and like gathering receipts and shit. And it turned into a whole nother live to now where I have like three different lives about this topic lined up. So this won't be the first topic. This won't be the only time I talk about this. Like I have a few different videos relating to my racially ambiguous people. Don't worry. Don't worry, fam. I got y'all. And that's another thing. I don't want people to feel like neglected on this channel. Also, like, like I said, it's easiest for me to speak on the when I'm confident and used to, but like, I haven't done that many like podcast videos about Blasians, but I post a lot about Blasians on, shorts and things like that. I'm not Blasian, so it's hard for me to speak on being Blasian. You know what I mean? I can speak in defense of Blasians, but it's hard for me to speak on a Blasian experience because I'm not Blasian. And also that's kind of weird. I mean, not weird because I'm a mixed woman, but you get what I mean. Like, it can get into strange territory. That's also why I kind of find it a little strange too that black women are the people who, specifically black women that are like dark skin and brown skin, are the ones that dominate the conversation about biracialness and mixed race identity. I find that kind of bizarre, honestly. Like, I get it because we're the most vocal and like we invent our intersectionality and all that type of stuff. But like, I get that. But at the same time, it's if you're admitting that you're a monoracial dark-skinned black woman who doesn't have a mixed experience or doesn't have a biracial parent or they might have a biracial child or something like that, like I don't understand how that makes you qualified to like be the leader of this narrative or to set any narratives. Like I don't really understand how monoracial or even mixed black women like myself how we came to be the controllers of that discussion. I don't really know. I guess because for a long time we were the main people having biracial kids, and so we feel automatically qualified. I don't know. I feel like that's kind of weird. That's a whole different topic. But yeah, that's why I'm always like kind of I tread lightly when talking about other mixed people's experiences. Not because I'm a black woman, but just because I understand how that feels to have other people constantly like trying to control your narrative or, speaking for you, speaking over you, especially if you know that you're a person that will be unfortunately taken more seriously. Let's be real. Black women are taken more seriously in conversations about being mixed than mixed people are taken in conversations about mixed people being mixed. So, there's a kind of a power dynamic imbalance in the conversation also. And I talk about that a lot on my channel. Anyway, that's a whole different other topic and discussion. I'm completely trailing off. But so anyway, so going to racially ambiguous versus racially undefinable. So in reality, like in retrospect, there is nothing wrong with the term racially ambiguous. And again, like I'm going back to, I would not consider myself to be a racially ambiguous person. I am a person who has a black phenotype who is light skin, whose admixture just shows. I feel like that's a different experience and different types of discrimination, as well as different types of positive experiences that you may have too, which is kind of what I'm gonna get into. But still like still different experiences within the light skin of African descent, like sphere, but it's different at the same time. Um, where was I going with that? Oh yeah. So, I kind of feel like, well, I don't really have a reason to have a huge opinion on it, but like when I was really doing research for this live and everything, I was really thinking about the term like racially ambiguous, and it's always kind of, I'm not gonna say it's always kind of, I felt like so about it in a way, because like I said, in retrospect it's not anything wrong with it or there's nothing negative about the term, but it's something about it, and other mixed people, especially particularly racially ambiguous people, can tell me how they feel about this or if they've had this perception of the word as well. But the way that it's used and the way that people tend to discuss racially ambiguous people when using that terminology, they tend to discuss it in a way that really gives me like kind of like the term ambiguous, it kind of implies some type of trying to be misleading or trying to go under the radar or trying to not be completely clear. Like the word ambiguous, it's a tone of like kind of distrust there in a way. Like I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it. But it's like a tone of like, oh, in people who like just think about the way it's usually talked about. Like they usually talk about it in a way and saying like basically setting it up like racially ambiguous people are like some type of racial interlopers who one minute they'll say they're one thing. And they say this about mixed people in general, but I just notice this a lot. The way when people talk about racial ambiguity, they especially when it comes to people who are mixed with black, they tend to heavily focus on, oh, well, you can say you're one race, but actually be another. You can say you're something else. And that kind of implies like that the tone of the argument or the tone of the name kind of comes from people who, let's be real, people who are monoracial, assuming that people who are mixed are kind of being deceitful or not being completely honest about who they are, and this is a constant narrative. So I'm not trying to read too deep into the word, but like this is a constant narrative that we see. So I do have to think, because up until like about like 5 or 6 years ago, I never heard the term racially ambiguous ever. I've only started hearing that recently. So, and when, like I said, like when I hear about it, I don't really hear them talking about it in a way that's like, oh, there's these racially ambiguous people that are, bringing all these people together because they could be in any group and they're like, they fit in everywhere and they're, everybody can relate to them and this and that. It's not talked about in that type of way. It's talked about in a way like we have to either keep an eye on you or we can't trust these people because, or, oh, because you don't look fully black or people can't tell you're black, you have XYZ experience that's easier. Like that's always the conversation, the narrative. So when I really started to think about like the term like racially ambiguous, yeah, in retrospect, there isn't an issue with the term. But when I really started to think about how it's used and how people with the dominant mindset, if you catch my drift, tend to use it, there is like it's a strangeness to it. And also, I just gotta be honest with you, I always think it's a red flag when there's a term about mixed people or a term to define or even a talking point that is used or a historical fact that is brought up that is used to describe mixed people when it's created by monoracial people. I'm sorry, I just got to be honest with you, I got to give it the side eye because again, it's kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier. How would you, as a monoracial person, know what it's like to be racially ambiguous? So how can you create terms? Now, I don't know if a racially ambiguous or a mixed person came up with the term racially ambiguous. I don't know. I really don't. I don't know who the definer is. It could have been a white person, could have been a black person. I have no idea. But I suspect that a mixed person did not come up with that term. And also at the same time, when you hear conversations and narratives about how racially ambiguous people move through the world, it's usually not a racially ambiguous person who's having these conversations. It's usually a person who either is physically really is monoracial or at least looks monoracial, or you can tell what part of what monoracial group they come from. Another thing, I ain't never heard the word monoracial before the last 5 years. Like I've never heard that word before. I don't hear it walking around outside. I don't even hear really the word admixture being used like that walking around outside. A lot of these terms on the internet, people do not use outside of the internet. So yeah, it is good that we're starting to create language to talk about, things that to apply them to the real world. But at the same time, let's be real here. Like if you're a mixed person and you're walking around your life, do you really want people to point you out as the racially ambiguous person? Oh, you're racially ambiguous. Like, yeah, it may not offend you or may not get you feeling some type of way because you know that you are. But let's be real here. You would find that a little odd and a little irritating, right? Like because you do have to think like if I tell you I'm um Syrian or I tell you I'm Dominican or Puerto Rican or whatever the case may be, and you say, "Oh, I couldn't even tell because you're so racially ambiguous." It's like, okay, I you couldn't tell because you don't know much about my culture. You don't know much about the people who I come from, usually. Because usually people in that group are not surprised that these quote unquote racially ambiguous people are part of their group. It's people from outside of the group who are confused about that. Even when it comes to like somebody who's biracial, black and white, a lot of the times, African Americans especially can tell when a quote unquote racially ambiguous biracial person is part black. Like we can tell a lot of the time. In fact, just the other day, I work in a where I work, I'm usually like the only like black woman. I'm just gonna say that straight off the bat. In the environment I work in, I'm like usually the only black woman. And so we work with like collaborating brands, and again, it's usually mostly white women, usually. So one time, one day recently, I was, gonna do something with one of our partners, and so I come to let her, and I saw her like from like across the block, and so I just assumed like she was like a white girl, not because I really put much thought into it, but because that's all I work with is white girls. So when I come up, I come closer to her and I say something directly in her face, and I'm in her face, and I could automatically tell that she was part black, like just off the bat. She didn't even have to say nothing, and I automatically could tell just by her facial structure that she was part black. And to give you an idea of her phenotype, she kind of had a similar phenotype to Meghan Markle, like someone who kind of has like um kind of a milky kind of tan skin tone. So not a European skin tone, like clearly a person of color. But if you were from afar, or she had light hair, or you didn't see her facial structure, or she was from behind, you might think that that was a woman of a European descent or a white woman or something like that. But when I got in her face, I could automatically tell. I was like, oh, I'm like, oh, that's a sister. Let me stop. I was like, that's a sister. Let me stop. But yeah, I could just tell by how she looked. So anyway, I couldn't confirm or anything, of course. And like this is a professional environment. So I'm not gonna be like, oh, are you black? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I just did my work and everything, whatever, went about the day. So then a few like hours later, I overhear them saying her name, and her name was literally Tiana. So I'm like, oh, okay, I know she's black. Like, or biracial. Like I mean, let's be real, she's probably biracial. Like, I'm like, okay, I know she's biracial, like for sure. Like, you know what I mean? But it's like, I'm just giving an example that like a non-black person probably, I don't think that they might not assume that she's fully white, but I don't think they would have ever assumed or known off rip that she was a person of African descent. Like a non-black person from outside the black community would never have known that. Or suspected that about her, especially because you couldn't see her hair. It was like pulled back in like a bun. Like, like certain features about mixed people will give it away, like, oh, you're a person of African descent. But certain people you can't tell. Like you might, she could have been like Middle Eastern. She could have been, she could have been a lot of different things. So that's why even when I saw her face to face, I didn't automatically assume, I didn't want to assume that she was African American or part African American, because she could have been other things too. But when I looked at her, I was like, oh, that's what I'm getting. As person who's part of that group, as where somebody else may not see it that way. So in my opinion, that is a great example of somebody who is quote unquote racially ambiguous, because she could have been Middle Eastern, she could have been, some type of Asian, as in like Central Asian or something like that. She could have been a lot of different people from genetically, a lot of different people from a lot of different places in the world. That is very different than somebody who looks like a person of African descent from a different part of the world. And I'm going to get into that in a second. When somebody cannot tell what your genetic composition is, to me, that is what it means to be racially ambiguous. When somebody can tell that you're a person of African descent, but they can't tell what country or what background you might have, but they can tell that you're a person of African descent, that is being ethnically ambiguous, in my opinion. And in my opinion, most people who are mixed with black and who are African American are ethnically ambiguous. If you are, I don't know, biracial, Creole, MGM, whatever, and people always think you're Puerto Rican, do people always think you're Puerto Rican because they think you're a different race? Or do they think you're Puerto Rican because people have knowledge that Puerto Ricans are a mixture of black, white, and indigenous? So yeah, are they incorrect about your ethnicity? Yeah, they're incorrect about your ethnicity, but genetically they can tell what you're mixed with. I don't know why people act like the world cannot tell that people be mixed with black. people can tell that you are mixed with black. There have been mulattoes and various other groups of mixed people, indios, which means half black, half indigenous, uh even mestizos that have black in them. There have been so many groups of people who are mixed with black. People in the Americas are largely not coy to who the people who are mixed with black is. Somebody like my coworker Tiana, who you see across the street, and a lot of people might think that she's either a white girl or completely some type of, Middle Eastern woman that has nothing to do with African ancestry. That is being racially ambiguous. You know what I mean? That's, in my opinion, what it means to be racially ambiguous. Somebody looking like Zoe Saldana and people thinking, oh, you're North African, and you being like, no, I'm Dominican. Are they thinking that you're a completely different race, or are they incorrect about your ethnicity? Now, people can disagree with me about that, but that's just my opinion as a person who is ethnically ambiguous and who looks like a light-skinned black girl. And I'm about to get into that in a minute. I feel like to say that somebody who looks like Beyonce is going to have the same mixed experience, and I'm not saying anybody's saying this, but you just get what I mean. Like, Beyonce's light skin experience is very, very different than Meghan Markle's light skin experience. Because Meghan Markle, you can look like Meghan Markle and you be receiving racism. They might not think you're a white woman, but you could be getting racism because they think you're Middle Eastern. They think that you're Indian. They think, you don't know where it's coming from because you don't know where, they don't know what you are. As where if you look obviously part black, like me or Sweetie, you pretty much know that the racism is coming from you either being part black or them seeing you as black. You know what I mean? It's pretty cut and dry. So yeah, I don't really worry about people having an issue with me because they think I'm Jewish. You know what I mean? Like, that's not something I have to deal with. That's something a racially ambiguous person would have to deal with. To give you a great example, the Tiana girl that was my coworker, she looked like she could have been Jewish. She looked like she could have been Middle Eastern. And we do get a lot of women who are from that region of the world. So that was another reason why I was like, she might not be part black. But once they said her name was Tiana, I was like, oh yeah. And I saw her last name. I was like, oh yeah, this girl. sis. Let me stop. But anyway, but anyway, that kind of leads me into my next topic that I want to get into, racial ambiguity versus ethnic ambiguity. But let me get some little drinky drink. It's just water. And then I'm gonna look at some comments too. Hey Irby. Hey, thanks for all the support. You said, and again, I gotta figure out how to do the comments and put the comments on the screen also. I gotta do one day and just sit down and like teach myself how to use this stuff. But anyway, so Irby says in the chat, all these terms are new to me. Monoracial ambiguity, even MGM shaking my head. Heard admixture. Yeah, I've heard of admixture also. I've heard it around, but I don't hear it like day to day just being used. And yeah, I never heard MGM also. I've never heard that term before recently also. Um Good point. Yeah. Even though like I do, when I heard the word, I was like, oh, this is great because it exactly describes like my ancestry, and I had never like even thought about that being even an issue of not being able to like name what it is. But yeah, outside of the internet, I haven't heard of it either. So what's the next thing I wanted to move on to? Oh yeah, racial ambiguity versus ethnic ambiguity. So if you are looking at the screen, you can see a nice collage I made of these lovely black and biracial women. I have 7 from Bad Girls Club, one of those seasons, Glorilla, and as well as Sweetie. I feel like these 3 ladies really show a good example of, or like give you a visualization of kind of like my phenotype and why I on my channel, it might seem like I heavily focus on like, oh, she just talks about skin color, or it's focused mostly on just being light skinned. But one of the reasons why I kind of use that flat like term a lot is one, because I'm a older Gen Z, younger millennial. So I still grew up in the times of like light skin, dark skin, brown skin, things like that. So for me, biracial, Blasian, Creole, MGM, like I understand that we all have our own unique experiences and identities, and I'm not like saying that we're all the same or nothing like that. But I grew up kind of feeling like we're in a similar like experience. So that's kind of why I just kind of use that flat term originally. But I also talk about like, mixed people of different skin tones as well because my family is that also. But that is one of the reasons why I speak so heavily from the perspective of being like light skin black or light skin mixed with black, because in my perspective, I have a light skinned black woman's phenotype. That is how I've moved through the world and lived my life. And people remind me of it constantly. And people can try to say, oh, white people don't see a difference, non black people don't see a difference. Oh, nobody can tell who's this skin tone and that skin tone, and everybody sees us as just black, da 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 da. Yes and no. Yes and no. I think that I think black people get things when people get it confused, when people can tell what culture you are from. But I think it's really facetious to say that white people cannot tell the difference between light skinned people, dark skinned people, racially ambiguous people, people who have been racialized as quadroons or octoroons. I think it's really facetious. You cannot, in one breath, say that the light skinned people were getting favored throughout slavery and that we still have light skin privilege and get favored now. You cannot say that we have light skin privilege and then turn around and say that everybody views us as black in the same way, because I'm not saying that they don't, but I'm saying that they don't see skin color, because I do think that they view us as as black. Don't get me wrong. I do think that they do. But what I'm saying is that this whole idea that they don't see skin color, or that they don't acknowledge somebody being mixed race or having significant admixture, I think that that's facetious, because even historically that's not been true. Even historically, white people have pointed out people being light skinned, have pointed out people being mixed race, have pointed out what the difference between a mulatto and a griffé is. Now, nobody uses those terms, but white people created them. Even the term red bone and yellow bone, these were like actual racial terms in some areas of the United States that white people would refer to. So, and actually had an issue with like groups like the Melungeons and the Creoles for being mixed. You know what I mean? So to pretend like historically or presently white people cannot tell a difference and don't see a difference is ridiculous. Not that it matters, because I don't care how white people view me or view us, or I don't care about none of that stuff. Don't get me wrong. But I also think that it's silly to pretend that that's not true. Everybody has eyes. Everybody who's American knows the history of slavery and all these different weird terms that they didn't come up with and created. So let's just stop with the games. So I definitely believe that there is a real experience behind in a specific treatment, and not saying that it's different from other black women's treatment, but are specific experiences that you will have as somebody who looks like a light skinned black person. That is just my perception. That's just how I feel, because people not only can they tell that you're clearly a person of African descent, but then you might have some mixture going on, or they can just see subconsciously, genetically, they know that you do. It's this weird tension that non-black people, including white people, will sometimes have with you. So, and it could be coming from anti-blackness, it could be coming from them thinking that, having their own prejudices about interracial relationships. It could be coming from a lot of different places that you don't really know for sure where it's coming from. Just like when it comes to racially ambiguous people, people could be being racist towards you or having an issue with you, and because they think you're one thing and you're something completely different. Like that's a huge racial and racially ambiguous experience. As where when you're light skinned black, you pretty much know that the issue is either, and which are combined together. And of course, you don't know this, but if you like, have a negative experience, like at the same job, I've had some weird racist experiences where I personally felt like that white person would not have said or did that to a darker skinned black person who they perceived as African American. And people can say, oh, that sounds crazy, that sounds extra, whatever. But no, the same way that they try to push the narrative that white people will treat mixed and light skinned people better, or will say stuff to us that they will not say to other black people, you also have to apply that in a negative context as well. So the same way y'all think that they only say positive shit to us and that it will sing our praises, it can also go the other way also, where they will say disrespectful shit to us that they will not say to brown skin and dark skinned black people, or they will be disrespectful to black immigrants. This is a huge thing that I know for a fact that I've even heard white people confirm is the truth. They will sometimes be disrespectful or talk crazy to immigrants, and this even goes for non-black immigrants too, because I've seen it. They will be disrespectful to them or talk crazy to them, but they'll have more respect or keep it cute with an African American person or a dark skin or brown skin person, because they know how they will, or they think they know how that person will react. As where with the black immigrant, or unfortunately some mixed and light skinned people, because a lot of us, unfortunately, we're not raised we're not raised in this with the same, like, how do I say this? Like, we're not raised to be as hypersensitive about certain shit in the same way dark skin and brown skin people are. And I know that that sounds bad, but that's definitely something I've noticed, especially if you're like a black immigrant or you're like Hispanic or something. Like, you're just not raised. And even if you come from like a mixed household, I just got to be honest with you, a lot of us are not raised to view things in the same way that some brown skin and dark skin people do, and that also sometimes creates a lack of self-awareness about certain shit also. And I haven't really heard a lot of people talk about this, but that's kind of what it is. Like, and I personally know this for a fact, especially when it comes to like the Latin community and like a lot of Hispanic people and stuff like that. Like, that when it comes to like United States racism, like, it's not that it's so different than Latin America, but it is, if you have parents that are immigrants and they're coming from another society, another culture, and this even goes for if you're, African, West Indian, whatever the case may be, and you come here and, your parents have their own experiences racially or whatever in their countries, and then you come in here and you're just thrown into this, environment, and you're not already pre-prepared and pre-told stuff about how, interactions might go, or the world may view you, or like things like that. Like, you might be a little desensitized to certain stuff. And yeah, like, that's why sometimes there's a stereotype that Africans kind of be pushovers to white people in a way that African Americans don't. Like, that's kind of where that comes from. But some white people will take advantage of that, and will be disrespectful to mixed, and I'm gonna just keep it to mixed and light skinned people for this context because of the video. But that's definitely a real thing. Like, even this, I've even had stuff happen within the last 6 months, especially when it comes to my hair, where a white woman says something a little crazy to me. I don't even want to get into it. But I just knew at the back of my head, I just felt like in 2024, she would have never said that to like a brown skin or dark skin African American woman. Like you cannot be like that unself-aware, like, that you would say that, like, that you would basically imply that my afro is dirty and that I don't do my hair. And I'm not saying that, and that I don't wash my hair. That's basically what she did. And I'm not saying that, oh, that never happens to brown skin and dark skin women, but I'm just saying, like, I just feel like sometimes they will say shit to you that they will not say to other people. And it's from a disrespectful place. It's not from a, oh, I favor you or I like you more place. It's from a place where I want to be able to say what I want to say, and I think that this person is going to let me get away with it because I understand black people's psychology more than black people understand my psychology. And I'm kind of getting off in a tangent here. But anyway, yeah, I definitely feel like, even, and like I said, I acknowledge that Sweetie is like, she's a Blasian woman, like she's biracial, things like that. But her phenotype, like phenotypically, like you can tell obviously she's a person of African descent. Like, if Sweetie told me she had two black parents, like, I would believe her. Just like if I knew she even had a white parent, I would believe her. She has an Asian parent, I would believe her. She looks like she can go either way. And that's kind of how it is having a like a light skinned black phenotype as opposed to being racially undefined. Because when you're racially undefinable, and I didn't even give my definition, but when you're racially undefinable, it means that people racially, based on your genetics, they feel like they cannot define where you ancestrally come from. As where if you just look light skinned, like a light skinned black person, people can tell ancestral you have African roots. You just might be admixed, or you might have just come out that way. You could be monoracial and you just came out that way. That's very different than, and I'm using Meghan Markle as an example, but that's just an obvious, like, example that we all know. Even somebody like Mariah Carey, like, Mariah Carey and Barack Obama are both black, white, biracial. They're gonna live very different lives through the world, even though um in their household and culturally we see them both as biracial, especially in the African American community, but phenotypically, and they grew up around similar time periods and things like that. But phenotypically, Sweetie and Barack Obama will have will might have it easier being accepted places, or people not giving them as a hard time about their race or their phenotype or their looks, just because they're easily defined. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but it's like if there's no confusion about genetically where your family or where your people come from, to me that's not racially ambiguous, because I can see that you're a person of African descent. I just can't tell what ethnicity you're from. That's not racial undefinable. The whole literally the definition of race is phenotype as it relates to genetics. So if I can look at Sweetie and see she's obviously part black, now, okay, you might not be able to tell that she's obviously part Asian, but like, come on, walking down the street, nobody's confusing Sweetie with a Middle Eastern person. Nobody's confusing Sweetie with a Russian woman. Nobody's confusing Sweetie with an Indian. Like, let's be real here. Like, people know what Sweetie, that she's part black. Like, she's ethnically ambiguous, but people can tell in most parts of the world, regardless of what y'all want to say and how y'all want to obsess over the one drop rule, regardless of what y'all say, in most parts of the world, people would know Sweetie is a black woman, just like they would know Glorilla and Seven are black women too. One drop rule or not. Now, you could be in Latin America and they might try to call you all these extra funny names, but at the end of the day, you're going to go into a store or a bar or try to get a job, and they're going to remind you real fast that you are a black woman, light skin or not. So I guess maybe because I grew up in a culture like that, it's easy for me to see that, or it's easy for me to view it like that. Um, but yeah, that's just my opinion. So that's also why I feel like, and speaking from the examples I gave earlier, that's also why I feel like, as somebody like me who does look the way I do, like, it would be a little, like, not unfair, but it would be a little strange for me to speak on being racially ambiguous, because like when you look at me, like, I look like what I am. Like, I've told y'all before, and if you look at my shorts, you could probably tell what ethnicities I'm mixed with. But like, I look exactly like what I am. So I don't feel like that's another reason why I don't see myself as racially ambiguous, because people who are racially ambiguous talk about how, like I said, like, you can be half black, half white, and then you find out that somebody is saying something racist towards you because they think you're Jewish or because they think you're Mexican. You know what I mean? Like, or like somebody being like, "Oh my gosh, I thought you were like Middle Eastern," and you're like, "No, I'm half black." Like, that is being like racially ambiguous. I've never been mistaken for anything except Dominican, Trinidadian, or Brazilian, literally. Oh, and now recently, because I have a tattoo in Arabic, now people are starting to ask me if I'm North African. They ask me if I'm Egyptian or Libyan. I've never been asked if I'm from Lebanon. I've never been asked if I'm even Syrian, even though that's still in Africa. Le- um no, that sounds stupid. I'm sorry. Syria is not in Africa. Yeah, I've never been asked. Oh my god, it sounded like a stupid ass American. I got um Libya and Syria confused. Libya is in Africa. Syria is in the Middle East. I've never been accused or asked if I'm Syrian. They only ask me if I'm North African. So again, if I'm literally half African American, half Caribbean, and Hispanic, and then people are thinking I'm Dominican, Trinidadian, or Brazilian, are they genetically incorrect about what I'm mixed with? Genetically, they're not too far off about what I'm mixed with. They just have the ethnicities and the countries wrong. So I'm not racially ambiguous. I'm ethnically ambiguous, because people can tell. They can basically tell what I am. If you can tell that I'm Caribbean and you're accusing me of being from another Caribbean island, the only difference is a boat stop. Like, anyway, that's just my tangent. But I've been wanting to make that distinction for a while, because like I said, I always kind of get a red flag with these terms that are created by monoracial people to describe mixed people. And I feel like that's kind of part of the confusion when it comes to this term, because people who are very obviously monoracial are the people who popularize the use of this term. I feel like because they have a different perception of racially ambiguous, because I've heard people call Sweetie racially ambiguous, and I disagree. I've heard people call Kamala Harris racially ambiguous. I disagree. To me, Kamala Harris looks like a light-skinned black woman. Now, of course, I believe that she's Indian. Funny, because I've also been accused of being Indian also. People have asked me, like Trinidad, if you know anything about Trinidad, Trinidadians are usually mixed with African and Indian. So people always think that I'm mixed with African and Indian also. So again, Jamaica, Trinidad, both places with a lot of people who are mixed with Indian. So again, are they incorrect, or do are they incorrect about my race, or are they incorrect about my ethnicity? No, they're incorrect about my ethnicity. So yeah, that's just my two cents about that. Like yeah, I feel like I'm kind of going on a tangent about this part. But yeah, that's why I wanted to point that out, because I definitely feel like that's there's a difference between that. Oh yeah, I was saying, because I've heard people say that Sweetie and Kamala Harris are racially ambiguous. Like I completely disagree. If you talk to some non-black people, they're not going to say Sweetie and Kamala Harris are racially ambiguous. The only people who say Sweetie and Kamala Harris are racially ambiguous are black people. And because they're comparing it to other black people who are way darker than them. But non-black people, not that it matters, because it's not the world's job to identify you, it's your job to identify yourself. And that's kind of another reason why I kind of get weird vibes from the whole term racially ambiguous, because racially ambiguous, it kind of also implies that somebody is intentionally misrepresenting themselves, or intentionally representing themselves as a different nationality or race, when a racially ambiguous person or a mixed person cannot control that you cannot tell what ethnicity they are, nor is it our job to provide you with the information about what we genetically are for you to feel comfortable. So I don't know. There's just an error of just like kind of like monoracial entitlement to me when it comes to that term, because it is not, nobody owes you telling you what they are. So if you're like, this person is racially ambiguous, well, why do you even want to know? Like, why is this term even being used? Like, like I like to get into the nitty gritty. And again, like I'm saying, in retrospect, there is nothing really wrong with the term. The term is not inherently offensive or bad, but in the way that it's often used, and the people I hear using it, in the way I hear them using it, I kind of get red flags, and I do have to kind of think more deeply about the topic. But again, like I said, I have the phenotype of a light skinned black woman. I live my life as a light skinned black woman. So my lived experience is very different than my coworker Tiana's or Meghan Markle's. I don't have to really deal with I don't have to deal with people not invalidating me, or I don't really have to do it in the same way, constantly educating people about who I am to make them feel comfortable. And I feel like that is something that racially ambiguous people are constantly having to do. And that's something that I hear them constantly having to do. A great person to who talks about this, I feel like has been very transparent and vocal about her experience as a racially ambiguous person, is Winter Blanco. I really like Winter Blanco. A lot of people don't like her. They think she's like a bully and she's mean and stuff like that. But I like her. I think she's really cool. She seems down to earth. She's a person. Like, people are complex. So I just think it's interesting how women of African descent got to be these tip top amazing people, but y'all will let these non-black women reinvent themselves a million times. And I don't like to do the comparing games, but I just noticed that, like, y'all holding on to some shit that this girl did back in like 2012 on Bad Girls Club. Y'all still mad about it and still accusing her of being a white girl when she's obviously not white. Like, she's obviously not white. And that's another thing. When you're actually racially ambiguous, let me go to my next slide. When you are actually racially ambiguous and you obviously look like a person of color, but people are accusing you of being white, people are accusing you of lying about your ethnicity. First of all, not only is it extremely highly offensive and, in my opinion, racist, but it also takes a toll on your mental health as well. Like, and it's just not cool. And like I said, mixed people don't owe nobody an explanation. But again, that's something that I have never had to deal with. I've never had to deal with somebody accusing me of being a white woman. I've never had somebody accuse me of lying about my ethnicity or being dishonest about it, because nobody cares. They're like, "Oh, okay, another light skinned black chick that, whatever, get in line with the rest of them." Like, nobody really cares that much. Just like, just being honest. Not saying that they don't care, but like in New York City, where there's already a bunch of like, Afro Latinos and people from all over the world and stuff like that, being mixed with what I'm mixed with is not like, it's not impressive in the same way. Like, it's not a commodity. Yeah, it's not a commodity. Like in New York, like being mixed is not a commodity. Like, is it cool? Of course. Are people proud of who we are, and we like, and we're proud, of our ethnicities and to link up with our peoples. Yeah, of course, but it's so many mixed and so-called racially ambiguous people and racially undefinable people in New York City who are multicultural, who come from different parts of the world, who speak different languages. Being mixed is not a commodity and not as much as a conversation or a big deal as it is in other state parts of the United States, because other parts of the United States are highly segregated and extremely like non-racially diverse. So that's why I feel like on the internet, people are so fascinated with being mixed and like the mixed multicultural experience and stuff like that, because it seems like outside of a lot of like major metropolitan cities like, Miami, Los Angeles, New York, it seems like a lot of places are extremely segregated, and a lot of times they don't encounter a lot of people who are, racially undefinable or who are multicultural. So it's like a huge like it's like yeah, it's like a different it's a different dynamic as we're in New York City when it is so many people like that. When you have the phenotype of a light-skinned black woman, it's not you can't I'm not gonna say I don't know, it's not seen in the same way. Like the other people who are light skinned are probably not even black or probably from whole different parts of the world. So you're just thinking about yourself in relation to other people of African descent. Like you not really thinking about it in relation to I'm the only person who has XYZ mix. There's a whole bunch of other mixed people or people from other countries. So it's just not in the same like it is not in the same way, I feel like. And because there are so many people who are from different countries, if you are clearly obviously part black, people are going to racialize you as that. They're not going to like they're not gonna see light skin and be like, "Oh my god, where are you? Where are you from? Oh my god!" Like, no, they're gonna see you as black because they also see three Middle Easterners, a Mexican, and an Indian that have your same skin color. So when you walk in there with your bell pepper nose and your lace front, they know you're obviously a black woman. They're not confusing you with the Syrian girl. Like, let's just be real here. Anyway, let me check out some of these comments before I get another little drinky drink. And I'm already like damn near an hour in. I haven't even pulled up none of my receipts. I always do this. I just be rambling. What does this comment say? Uh Irby says white people play colorism too. Yeah, they do. They'll play colorism games and they'll play colorism games both ways. I don't know why people act like they always only side with the light skinned people or the mixed people. That is absolutely not true. Like clearly y'all don't know or talk to white people. Like, y'all clearly have not been around a lot of white people when I hear certain stuff. Cause I'm like, please. um and so earlier you said Seven is black passing to me. I was surprised to know she's biracial. Oh wow, she's biracial. See, I actually genuinely didn't know that. I actually didn't know anything about her background. I actually did no research on her. Um, I was just thinking, I'm like, who are some women that look like me? And I just put her up there. But yeah, I actually did not know Seven was biracial. Then see, and that even further proves my point. Because to me, she looks just like Glorilla, who's a monoracial black woman. Sweetie and Seven look just like Glorilla to me. To me, I could be, it's up for interpretation, but to me. So that's why I don't really major in the minors when it comes to the like differences between mixed and light skinned people of African descent. I feel like it's exactly that, majoring in minors. Um, do you think okay, then Irby says, an example, Alicia Keys, Halle Berry, Mariah Carey, Seven will have different experiences. Yep, absolutely. And they're all biracial, you know, just like me and I'm trying to think of somebody. Me and Coco Jones on paper, we're all black women, but we're gonna have different experiences based on our phenotype and the places our families come from. So yeah, it's a lot of diversity there. And you said, do you think and then Irby also asks, do I think phenotype trumps DNA? I think it depends on the situation. That's definitely a situational topic, because to me, in reality, no, it never does. Because this is how I look at it. Just to give y'all an example, I've known people. I knew some biracial boy, my family it was like a family friend of ours. The mother was a light-skinned Haitian woman, and I'm talking about like very, very light skin. Like to give you all an idea of how she looked like she looked like Angela Davis. So she was Haitian, but she looked like Angela Davis. So and mind you, they will be trying to gaslight us and say that she's fully black. Which okay, I know she probably is monoracial with two black parents, but this is the issue that a lot of MGMs have. And this is the difficulty with growing up with MGM people because you're basically raised to gaslight yourself about life. Like I have to look at this obviously genetically biracial woman, but we all are just supposed to pretend that all of these people are just 100% straight up black. Like, and I get it. Like, I understand why, as people in the Americas, we move like that and we act like that. But anyway, so this woman, she ended up having a child with a German man, and the little boy came out looking straight up German, like straight up blonde hair, blue eyes, everything. And I was gonna talk about this later, but I guess I'll just talk about it now. But yeah, so this little baby boy came out straight up a little white boy, right? Straight up, he will move through the world as a white man. If he was to run around saying the N word, it wouldn't be no, oh, he's light skinned, oh, he's mixed, da 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 da. No, he straight up looked like a white boy. Granted, I haven't seen him in like 25 years, but still. If I can imagine, I don't know how he looks now, but at that time he did. So anyway, I still saw him as like part black. Like I still saw him as a little girl. I still saw him as like biracial. Like I still saw him as mixed, like me to an extent. Like even though I saw him as white in a way too, I still knew he was like mixed. I still knew he had a black mother. Like can't even explain it, and that sounds weird as hell. But like that's how I viewed it as a little girl. So in my opinion, DNA kind of does trump phenotype. Like in the grand scheme of things, DNA does trump phenotype because it doesn't matter if you move through the world looking quote unquote like a white person or looking racially ambiguous or undefinable or something like that. If you have a black parent or you're Afro Latino and you have like a significant black ancestry, like that's part of who you are. It doesn't really matter how you phenotypically look. So, in my opinion, what I should have said earlier was yes, I do think that DNA trumps phenotype, but at the same time, I think you can apply that question to so many different incidences that it really is a situational topic, if that makes sense. Or we said a tattoo in Arabic girl. Yeah, I know. I was going through a wild time in my life. And you know what's so funny? These Arab dudes still like they be looking at them like, oh my gosh, you Muslim, I gotta take you out. Da, 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 da. I'm like, yo, y'all are haram. Like, y'all are straight up haram. First of all, y'all over here trying to date a girl who's not even in your religion. You over here trying to date a big booty black girl with a afro. Like, I know your mama is not gonna fuck with me. Like, stop it. And I got tattoos and stuff. Like, this is not gonna work out. Like, I could do a whole live stream just on the amount of shenanigans and nonsense I've had to deal with from Arab guys, but that's a whole different topic. Like, and a lot of this started with that tattoo because they see the tattoo and they always make comments of it. But yeah, and it's funny because it be Arab guys that have, or maybe I shouldn't call them Arab. I should call them Middle Eastern. No, I should call them North African. Yes, I'm gonna call them North African because that's what a lot of them were. Some of them were Middle Eastern, but a lot of them were North African. They were the ones that was asking me if I was North African. So I guess I look North African. I don't know, but I've never had like non-North African people ask me if I was North African though. So I don't know if they were just like engaging in wishful thinking or what. But yeah, I don't think I'd make a pretty good uh Muslim woman or a Muslim wife, honestly. I'm a raging feminist. I think we get tired of each other, but and the tattoo is it's on my wrist, so that's why it's like easy to be seen. But I have like a bunch of tattoos, so um and then for the Irby also said exactly New York and other cities different versus Kentucky, Alabama, Oklahoma. Yeah, exactly. Angela Davis. And then you said Angela Davis did an ancestry test with Henry Louis Gates and wasn't surprised what she found out was funny. Yeah, didn't she come out to be like almost like 40% European and one of her ancestors came from like the Mayflower or something? Like and I'm not laughing, but it's like because like my family is Angela Davis, like I literally was raised by Angela Davises. Like people who have that mindset is it, It's a familiar dilemma. Let me just say that. Oh my god. And then and then Irby also said all these people, Angela Davis, Louis Farrakhan, Malcolm X, they all knew and they all were super pro black. Yeah, yeah, I do feel like subconsciously a lot of light skinned black people or MGMs, they get really pro black because subconsciously they might be an insecurity there or to make up for the white ancestry. I don't really know. It's an interesting phenomenon. Even I'm gonna be honest with you, I even went through a period where I was very like black community minded. I will say at the time I thought I was pro black, but looking back, I actually wasn't pro black because pro black people never liked me because of all my woman centered rhetoric and how I would always defend black women. So I would always end up getting like booted out of the spaces or the women wouldn't like me and then eventually the men would turn on me too. So I've always kind of been like very feminist minded. And I had to realize that my real passion and who I really cared about was black women and children. So I have went through times in my life when I was kind of like that as well, which I feel like is healthy because you should care about your community. But when it's taken to an extreme and you're like engaging in self-deprecation or you don't even want to date somebody who looks like you, like I don't understand how you're pro-black, but you don't even want to reproduce blackness that looks like you. And that just goes back to like this insecurity that I feel like some light skinned people have, or this like subconscious guilt that I feel like a lot of light skinned people have that is unhealthy also because it gets passed down to your children. And it just gets projected and people pick up on that. But I definitely feel like a lot of that is to make up for something because I've definitely noticed with a lot of mixed and light skinned people, it seems to be two extremes with them. Like it seems to be like either they're extremely pro black and very like black identity centered, or they're like the complete opposite. And like they kind of like low key want nothing to do with blackness. Like they're borderlining like coonish mentality. Like it's like two extremes. Like it's hard to find a lot of people who are balanced with that or like have a very healthy outlook towards that. And that's not any fault of mixed and light skinned people themselves. I want to make that very clear. I'm not saying this to be catty or anything. Um I think that that's just my takeaway from it. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier that a lot of unfortunately mixed and light skinned people are not raised to be conscious of certain things that racially honestly we should be conscious of, because there really isn't a concept of Afro mixed race racial consciousness. Like there's not, that's not really a thing. So you kind of just have to assimilate into monoracial black consciousness thought, and then often you find out that you are seen as an adversary within that mindset too, and then it just becomes this really toxic schism in your head, and then some people feel rejected and they turn, they turn coon on you, and then they just go straight, crazy. It can get really toxic, or like they try to make up for it really badly and then they just become extremely self-deprecating, and it can get weird. It can get real weird, let me just say that. It can get weird. But let me take a brief break while I pull up this article. Alrighty. So I want to just read this article that is from Very Well Mind. Check out their blog. They make a lot of good mental health related content, especially as it relates to like identity and race and things like that. And the blogs are super short. They're like less than a 10-minute read. Just to get your read on and your exercise your mind here and there. I definitely recommend reading some short articles just to keep yourself sharp, especially when you're out of school and stuff. Because once you get back into school, if you do ever do, it can be really difficult. Speaking from experience. So, but articles is like something that always like keeps me sharp. Please read. Please, please, please read. Like I'm begging y'all to read something, a documentary. If I can't get y'all to read, can you at least watch a documentary, please? Just consume a scholarly source, please. That's all I ask. But do that for me. But anyway, so let's get into this article. And so this article is called "What is Racial Ambiguity?" and it was written by a racially ambiguous woman. So that's why I wanted to read it, because like I said, I'm not racially ambiguous. I can't speak on something that is not my direct experience. So as you can see, this is the author as a child. This is a picture of her parents. Now listen. Look at this father. Look at her daddy. Look at her daddy. I'm sorry, but if I didn't know, if you did not tell me this was an interracial couple, I may not have known. Now I could squint and I would think, oh, okay, maybe he's like Puerto Rican or something, maybe he's Creole, whatever, whatever. But let's be real, off rip, if I just saw this picture like just scrolling really fast, I wouldn't have no idea this is an interracial couple. So another aspect of this, and I might do this as a completely separate live, just all on its own. And this is a real discussion that we as light skinned Black people need to have, especially light skinned Black people who interracially date and who could create biracial children in the future. This kind of goes back to what I was talking about my family friend who's a light skinned Haitian woman with a German son. Um, the reality is and this also why I get irritated with monoracial people pretending that they are affected by and give a shit about the one drop rule. The one drop rule does not affect you if you are a monoracial Black person does not have mixed ancestry. So stop trying to force fetch. A great example of how the one drop rule can something of that concept will affect mixed people today is if you are a Black man that looks like this woman's father and you present like him, or you look like my family friend who's a Haitian Angela Davis, and you go have a child with a white person, and then your child comes out looking either extremely racially undefinable or comes out looking like a whole white person. Because let's be real, most of the time when we talk about quote unquote like white passing biracials, and I'm talking about actual white passing biracial. Okay, this is another live I gotta do. I'm making a whole list, y'all. I gotta do a whole live just telling y'all what white passing is, because this is another thing that irritates me when y'all call racially undefinable people white passing. Like, to me, Winter Blanco is not white passing. Mariah Carey is not white passing. Meghan Markle really, to me, isn't really white passing. Like, to me, if I saw her, I would think she was Middle Eastern or non-Black Hispanic woman, or a Hispanic woman who has limited African ancestry. But I would never see Meghan Markle as just a straight up white girl, ever. Now, there are biracial people who real life are white passing. And I feel like because there have been so much conflation between like, oh, between skin color and between these terms and everything like that, I feel like that's created a lot of confusion to where now there's a confusion between what is light skin, what is racially ambiguous, what is white passing, what is somebody intentionally trying to pass versus somebody who just so happens to look white or like another ethnicity and cannot control that. There's a lot of confusion with that there. A lot of that comes from the fact that mixed people don't control the narrative and we don't have a cultural conscience to speak from ourselves, but that's a different conversation. But I'm just saying, a lot of the times when you have these biracial kids that come out looking very, very racially indefinable or straight up white passing, they usually have mixed parents. They usually have parents that are either biracial or light skinned Black, aka usually in MGM. And because up until like, you know, 1995 or something, there really wasn't a category for biracial or MGM people. A lot of Gen X and boomer mixed and light skinned people, they're categorized as black. So when they go out and have biracial kids, and then the kid comes out looking like Rashida Jones, and they're like, I'm half black, and the world's looking at them like, are you sure? The reason why there's this confusion is because her black parent is already mixed, but because there's no social conscious or language to describe that Quincy Jones genetically is already mixed. And I want to be very clear with what I'm saying, because I am not one of the people that's trying to pretend like light skinned black people are not light skinned black people, and that, oh, we should stop calling ourselves that, and we should all just pretend to be mixed, and we should all just go be NGM. I want to be very clear, that's not what I'm saying at all. I still see myself as a light skinned black woman. I still see myself as black through and through, but I live in reality, and I have to be honest. Genetically, I am a mixed person. So if I go out and have a biracial kid, I will be doing a disservice to my child by already knowing I'm genetically mixed myself, going and having a child with a white person, and then telling, or a non-black man of any sort or whatever, and then sitting there and gaslighting, because it's gaslighting, and gaslighting my child and saying, oh, you're only 50-50 black and white, and or black and whatever. And then if the kid comes out looking who knows what type of way, and then I'm trying to gaslight them and tell them how that they look one type of way. Well, why aren't you being honest about the fact that you already are mixed yourself? And I understand it's an uncomfortable conversation, and I understand why culturally we do this. So I'm not chastising, but I'm just being honest. Like, if you look like Angela Davis, why are you surprised that your kid comes out looking like his white German father? When you already are damn near 50% white yourself. Your kid genetically is mostly going to be white. And like, even though I understand your kid genetically is mostly white, so you cannot then turn around and act shocked and surprised, like, oh my God, why do I have a white baby? You created a white baby. You created a mixed white baby. So why are you now faulting these children and giving them these funny names and trying to accuse them of trying to pass for stuff and trying to be ambiguous? That's not cool. No, you're not being honest about the situation. You're not being honest genetically about your history. Then the kid comes out and you want to play coy and act shocked and surprised. I'm sorry. This kind of really, I'm really passionate about this because I've seen this a lot in my life when it comes to like light skinned black people having biracial kids, and I see the effect on the kids, and it really irritates me. Like, this is something I'm really passionate about, actually. This is why I think I'm gonna do a live on it. Not only because like I said, I interracially date myself, but just because I've seen how it's affected people, and like just seen it, and I just kind of feel like at this point it's just ridiculous. Like, and I feel like even before DNA tests were a thing, if you look a certain way, like, you do not have, like, I'm just sorry. You mixed people know that they are mixed. All these light skinned people be knowing that they are mixed. They know that they have a significant amount of European ancestry and admixture. Now, they might not come out and say that publicly just around the way. They might not identify that way, but mixed people, light skinned people, they know that a lot of them genetically are mixed. They know that. So I don't understand why y'all will have these kids and then gaslight them throughout their life and say, no, 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 you're 50-50 black white, 50-50 black white, which is nothing wrong with that. But come on now, you know your kid more than likely is going to have a very different experience as Rashida Jones that she's going to have looking like Sweetie or Lenny Kravitz. Like, I just don't think that that's fair to your child. I'm just being honest with you. So I just feel like that's a real thing you really do have to. And I also want to be clear. I'm not saying that about this woman's father. Like, I don't know him at all personally. Like, I don't know. It seems like she's well rounded and came out like to be a good woman. I'm not saying this about anybody personally. I'm not even saying that about my family friend. This is literally just a rant that I'm just been wanted to go on, and just something that I'm passionate about. I'm not speaking about anybody specifically, but I do see this often. Like, even I have a friend, she's Dominican, and she was telling me how her cousin, who's obviously Dominican also, and whose phenotype can I describe her up as? Oh, she kind of has a similar phenotype to Journey Smollett, right? So I can assume her cousin probably has a similar phenotype too. But anyway, she was telling me how her cousin had a baby with a white guy who's an American white guy recently, and that the baby came out looking very white. Mind you, the baby's only 6 months. This is another thing that irritated me about the story. The baby's only 6 months. First of all, you need to be happy that you had a healthy, happy baby girl. That should be the only conversation. I hate when Black and Spanish people come telling me about the baby's skin color, hair texture, and eye color. I don't give a shit about that. Is the baby happy, healthy, fed, clothed, and is mommy and daddy good and there? That's all I care about. I don't care about their color. I don't care about what little nickname. I don't care about none of that. So the fact that she was telling me this story irritated me anyways. But anyway, she basically told me that her cousin had a baby with a gringo, right? And the baby that's only 6 months has not even come into their features or anything, because y'all know with a lot of babies of color, they still have to come into their skin tone and their features and their hair texture and everything like that. So I don't know why this woman is freaking out. Like, but anyway, basically the baby still looks very white, and essentially my friend's cousin was basically depressed because she had a white baby. Like, think about, just like wrap your head around how like kind of low-key disturbing that is. Like, she was literally telling me like that her cousin was depressed because she had a white baby. And I'm just like, if you didn't want to have a white baby, why didn't you go have a baby with another Dominican guy so he could leave you a single mother? Like, let me stop. like you could have had your Black baby. You may not have had no Black man around, but at least you could have had your baby. Let me stop. Let me stop. I'm being super petty right now. But I'm just saying, like, if this was genuinely something that you were so concerned about, that about your child's skin color or race, which it shouldn't be. You really shouldn't be having kids at all if that's going to be drive you to be depressed. Now, granted, I also want to say it could be postpartum, it could be a lot of different things, and my friend just told me that one aspect, so I'm not trying to judge this woman too harshly. And at the same time, I'm not in that situation, so I don't know how I will react to something like that. Now, I have tried to think about it, but I don't know how I would react to that situation. So I'm not judging this girl too harshly, but I did kind of find the story to be a little disturbing, especially considering my friend is clearly, obviously a mulatta, like straight up and down, clearly like 50-50 black white mix, even though clearly she's NGM because she's Dominican. But I'm just saying, like, the whole family is obviously mixed race. So I'm just like, why are you playing coy that you had a white baby? Mind you, this is what I'm talking about. This is the delusion of a lot of people of African descent, because there's a whole term in Spanish. I'm not gonna say it, but there's a whole term in Spanish, and it basically means improve the race, right? And the whole concept is that you keep marrying interracially so that you have a white baby. So the fact that she was literally trying to play stupid, like she didn't know what she was doing. And I'm not saying that she was trying to do that. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying she had nefarious intentions in her relationship. But I'm saying, like, they for a long time, people, even if there was no such thing as DNA, genetic tests, whatever, paternal tests, anything like that, people for a long time have understood genetics. So there's really no reason why there should be Black women in 2024, and this goes for all skin tones and all races, because I see brown skin and dark skin women doing that too, where they get depressed and feel some type of way because their mixed baby doesn't look the way that they thought it was going to look. If you still feel that way, like, you just should not, in 2024, when we have all this information about genetics and how you don't know what you could be having and things like that, if that's still a concern of yours, you need not be having children anyways. Like, because if that's a concern, you need to go save your money and get a build a baby from one of these GMO baby test tube baby sites or something. Or I kind of feel like adoption, especially international adoption, is a little inhumane, but you can also adopt a child if it's that serious to you. Like, if you want a Black child that badly, there's so many Black little baby girls and boys in the United States that y'all could adopt, but you don't. Anyway. Anyways. I went off into a whole tangent, but anyway, so this is the author and her grandmother. So you can see that she is very racially ambiguous as a biracial girl, and you can see her with her white grandmother. So I thought this was a cute picture. And that's her again with her dog. So you can see she's very, in my opinion, very racially undefinable. Like in this picture, she looks very POC and she could be a lot of different races. She could even be like maybe Jewish or maybe from Lebanon or, you never know. That probably wasn't the best politically correct example at the moment, but you get what I mean. But yeah, anyways, let's get into the article. Sorry, I need some little drinky drink. Oh, let me try to find the picture of how she looks now though. So I gotta zoom in, but this is how she looks now, if y'all can see. So I feel like she definitely really came into her features as she got older. Cause like here to me, she looks obviously like a person of color. Like I think this is she's an excellent example of somebody that I would consider racially undefinable because she does like her skin color and her facial structure to me does look like that of a person of color, but I can also see some ignorant, maybe white people or non-black people maybe thinking that she's a different race or maybe thinking she's Italian, maybe like a Middle Eastern white woman or something like that. But to me, she doesn't look white, but maybe in some spaces with some hairstyles and stuff, she might be able to. Maybe in Latin America, they might perceive her as white. I will say that. But to me, I wouldn't consider her a white person at all in the United States. But again, everything is always up for interpretation, and I think that is really the huge takeaway from being a person who is racially ambiguous. But anyway, let's get into the article because I'm already going a lot longer than I wanted to, as per usual, because I'm such a rambler. So the article says racial ambiguity occurs when a person's racial background cannot be easily indefined based on appearance or other characteristics. Racially ambiguous people may be perceived as biracial or multiracial, but others may not be able to discern their specific racial background. Being racially ambiguous can come with challenges as well as privileges. It sometimes means experiencing less racism and discrimination and but in being able, but it can also mean being excluded by both white people and from their own racial background. Keep reading to learn more, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Okay. Understanding racial ambiguity. Often it is easy to tell that somebody's racial background is by looking at them. For example, a person may have physical features we associate with being black, white, or Asian or Native American. Some people, though, appear to have features that fit more than one racial group. When someone cannot be easily placed in a racial category, they may be considered racially ambiguous. Racial ambiguity is a term for when people's racial, oh, yeah. Oh, well, I guess I'll read this, but it says, yeah, a term for a person's racial background isn't easily indefinable. They don't appear to be what's commonly called monoracial or being of one race. If a person appears to be racially ambiguous, you might think that they are mixed race, also known as multiracial, but not being able to tell which races are included in their background. A racially ambiguous person may be perceived differently by different people depending on their skin coloring and the physical features. A racially ambiguous person might be perceived as white by one person but as a person of color by another. Often racially ambiguous racial ambiguity can be a result of having a parent of different races, but it isn't always the case. A person who comes from a monoracial background can occasionally appear racially ambiguous too. So I want to kind of direct us back to my slideshow because when I think of somebody who's racially ambiguous, this is kind of like the collage I put up. And I want to make it clear I do believe that brown skin and dark skin people can be racially ambiguous. There are Indian people who look like they can be African American or look like they can be Hispanic or something like that. So I want to be very clear that I'm by this picture, I'm not trying to say that only lighter skinned people are racially ambiguous, but for this example, it was just easier for me to use these examples to be very obvious in what I'm talking about. And I also intentionally chose people who come from a wide range of different backgrounds. So some people on here are black, white, biracial. Some people on here are Middle Eastern. Some people on here are Hispanic. So if you know who's what, then you know. But a lot of the times, the point in this collage is showing that for people who are truly racially ambiguous, you really cannot tell not only their racial background but their ethnic background either. Like, you cannot tell me that most of the people, if not all the people on this page, you can tell exactly what racially they are. Now, you may know just because you know them from the media, but if you saw these people walking down the street, you would not be able to tell where they're from, what language they speak, what their racial, heritage and genetic background is. You just would not be able to tell. That is not the same as me looking at Obama and being able to tell that he has African ancestry. Now, okay, it might be at different varying degrees, but please do not tell me that Beyonce, I mean, yeah, even Beyonce or Barack Obama walking around with one of these people that look like this is going to have the same racialized experience. And that's not comparing or contrasting, saying one is worse or better at all. I'm not saying that. It's just not going to be the same. And it's not fair to either group to pretend like it is. It is not fair for people who have a light skinned black phenotype to try to gaslight racially ambiguous people and try to make it seem like, oh, we're all having the same experience. Oh, everything for you is so good. Oh, this and this and that. I disagree. I disagree. Do I think that there are things that are positive and negative about both experiences. I think there's things that are struggles or advantages from both experiences. I don't think there's a compare and a contrast, and I think we can both respectfully empathize with each other's experiences. I think this constant trying to force racially ambiguous people to be like basically the scapegoat for white people and to be the punching bag of people of color. I don't agree with that because I feel like there are a lot of struggles that come from being racially ambiguous, and I just feel like people heavily focus on the quote unquote like privilege aspect and like the positives of being racially ambiguous. They don't talk about like the mental health toll that takes on you and like the personal self-perception toll that takes on somebody. Like, I've had limited experiences of being invalidated myself. I'm gonna be honest with you. The most of my issues growing up came from other black girls just being on some regular shit that they be, and then Hispanic people being on some regular shit that they be, and also them having an issue with me not speaking Spanish. I really didn't have to deal with being like rejected from either group or people telling me like, oh no, you're not this, you're not that, or or a lot of invalidation. I really did not have to deal with that growing up. I more so started to have to deal with these types of issues as an adult, which is completely insane to me that as a child, I didn't have these experiences. But now that I'm a grown woman, now I have to be on YouTube talking about skin color because I have more experiences as an adult when it comes to colorism and race and things like that than when I was a child. Now, granted, I mean, when you're a child, you have a limited worldview and understanding, but I don't remember my race or being mixed or anything like that ever having an issue or being an issue for me as a little kid. It was either my hair or not speaking Spanish. That's really basically it. And even the hair thing, in my opinion, like, that's not necessarily a specific racial experience. I mean, a lot of girls go through feeling insecure about their hair of all races. So I think that's really different than growing up and like never knowing where you fit in or constantly having to explain your race to people or constantly, you trying to hang out with the black girls and then they acting funny towards you and they rejecting you because they don't know what you are. And then you go to the white girls and they're like, ew, no, you're not white, and then they rejecting you. Like, I can't imagine what that is. Like, I've never had to question if I go in this group of black girls, are they going to accept me as a black girl? I've never had to deal with that. And despite whatever other, people who are light skinned black want to say, that does not happen to light skinned black people. Light skinned black people do not get rejected on the basis of, oh, you're not black enough, you're not you're not black. We get rejected on the basis of we're gonna treat you some type of way because we have stereotypes about you. Mind you, they will not apply those stereotypes to a non-black person who looks like you. So you can be down, you can be in the group, but they're gonna act funny towards you because you're black. I think that's a huge part of this that people do not talk about. Like, think about why they're always antagonizing Dominicans and Cardi B and like Afro Latinos, but you don't never see them antagonizing Mexicans in that way. They don't antagonize Mexicans in that way because they don't see Mexicans or Central Americans, mestizos, as part of their sphere of influence because they don't see them as black or part of the African diaspora. So they don't see them as fair game. So if somebody's attacking you for being a light skinned black girl, or they are like in my situation where you're in a work setting with a bunch of other black girls and one of them says I slap light skinned bitches, they're not rejecting me for being light skinned. I'm down with the black girls. They know I'm black. They just want to keep me in my place or are treating me a certain type of way. So that's how I feel. Like, I've never felt like I've genuinely being told that I'm not black or being excommunicated from, you know, black community or black women's spaces. Like, that, in my opinion, that's not genuinely what's happening. What's happening is that it's a thing of like, you're here, but we want to be able to control how you move. We want to be able to control what you can say, what you can do, how you're perceived. That's what it is. I don't feel like it's a thing of like them, oh, we're not accepted like that. Yeah, do we have a different set of standards? Yeah, but for the most part, so you're really going to sit here and lie to me and say that Chris Brown, Beyonce, and Rihanna are not accepted in the black community? Like, the vast majority of light skinned black people are definitely quote unquote accepted in the black community. It's just the problem is that you have to walk on eggshells or deal with a whole bunch of funny ass treatment and weirdo shit from within there. That's, to me, that's different than somebody who doesn't read as black, and then your whole life you're dealing with trying to connect with black people, and then they're essentially telling you like, I don't know what you are, you don't look black at all, you're lying about being biracial, you're lying about your daddy being black, you're lying about being Afro Latino, whatever, like that. Nobody would ever has ever accused me of lying about being mixed. Nobody's ever accused me of lying about being black. Nobody's ever told me I wasn't mixed. Nobody ever told me I wasn't black, because what I am is obvious. Like I said, I look like exactly what I am. So there's even quote unquote privilege as a mixed person in that I don't really have to explain racially what I am to people, because when I explain it, they know off the board because I look like what I am. That a lot simpler than somebody like Winter Blanco, who doesn't look like a white woman at all, but is constantly having to take to social media and explain to people how she's biracial and that she's not a white woman, and that the whole like white girls club was, white girls band was a joke or whatever it was. Like, somebody who looks like Sweetie would not have to deal with that. Now, we might get harassed in different areas. We might get harassed because of our hair. We might get harassed because you dating some nigga that they like, whatever the case may be. It's just a different set of struggles. It's just a different type of light skin experience. That's just what I've been trying to preface with this. But anyway, so she goes on to say, racially ambiguous people occupy an in between space in our culture. While they may be any race or any combination of races, by not being seen as the race or races they are, they tend to have different lived experiences than the people of those races who did not live as racially ambiguous. Racially ambiguous people may love not being clearly identified. Oh, racially ambiguous people may love not being clearly racially identified, or it may cause them a great emotional pain. It may be their favorable physical attributes, or they may take action to appear more monoracial. There is no universal experience of racial ambiguity. I'm gonna just be honest with you. I feel like most people don't want to always have to explain what they are. Most people don't want to face hostility from the group that they come from because people cannot tell what they are. Most people don't want to constantly have people asking them what they are. So, are there some people who I think might, you know, they might like the chase. They might like the game, maybe, but as a mixed woman, I know that most mixed people don't want to have to always keep explaining themselves to people and or get tired of the emotional labor of having to deal with that. So I think that's a stereotype too, that makes people like love these games and love this attention and love being racially undefinable and jumping in and out of categories and things like that. I disagree. I think most mixed people want to just be normal people and just be accepted into their group just as is and not have to deal with a whole bunch of vetting and questions and just nonsense when it comes to their race and stuff. That's just my opinion. But anyway, so then they go on to say there are, however, progressively more racially ambiguous people in our country as we become less segregated society, open to finding love and partnership in any group. According to the U.S. Census, there was a 300% increase in multiracial populations in the United States between 2010 and 2020. Sometimes racially ambiguous people are thought of as the future of humanity, representative of what all people will look like at some point in the potential future when so much global pairing has occurred that monoracial people are no longer the norm. Why racial ambiguity is an experience we should know. Racially ambiguous people may move through society wholly different than people of discernible races. As we will address, this has both privileges and challenges. In society, contending with racism, it's important to be aware of the varied experiences of the population, and racially ambiguous people can teach people of identifiable races a lot about how nuanced and complex racial identity can be. While monoracial people have a signature experience of race, racially ambiguous people often have many different experiences with it throughout their lives. I think that was a good paragraph. I agree with that. Um, I don't really care about this part, so I'm not gonna read that. I'm sorry. I don't really care about the privileges of looking racially ambiguous. We hear about that on TikTok all the time. We don't need to hear that. I want to hear. I want the tea. I want the nitty gritty. I want the juicy shit. Yeah, let's get into the challenges. So it says the challenges of racially ambiguous people face. Um, is as much as racially ambiguous people may experience some privileges than others do not, they face they are faced with many challenges. Difficulties airing from racial ambiguity may include not being viewed as a member of the race they are, both by people of that race and people of other races, an inner sense of not belonging to any community, strife from family members who identify differently than the racially ambiguous person. This is really important. It's something that doesn't get talked about enough. And then she goes on to say racism from white family members, structural racism that prevents them from having the same opportunities as white people, and inappropriate questioning about their backgrounds by strangers. And I cannot preface this enough. I feel like I should do a whole video just about the inappropriate questioning about their background from strangers. And this is why I love reading content and watching content made by other mixed people, because we can really bounce ideas off each other and create terms and stuff like that, because I'd never thought to phrase it in this way, but that's absolutely right. Like, there's an inappropriate line of questioning that strangers engage in, and sometimes people who you even know personally, but they will engage in it, and it will make you feel extremely uncomfortable. It's extremely like over, like, just still stepping over their bounds, and people do not care. They will still ask these questions. That's another thing that happens to me at my job, where I feel like they wouldn't do that to a browner skin or darker skin black woman, where they're always asking me like, oh, where's your family from? Like, where are you from? And I notice they always do that when I say something that they don't expect a black woman to say, or when I share a very minuscule, vague detail about myself that's not stereotypical, then they always want to be like, oh, where are you from? Or even if I say the Midwestern city that my mother's from, they're always like surprised, like, oh, really? Like, oh, where's your parents from? Like, and I'm kind of generally, I don't really care about telling people what I am or like where I'm from or anything like that. But it depends on, like, depends on how it was asked. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you. Sometimes I feel like they're asking, and I feel like this is across the board with like monoracial people, like black or white or whatever. They're not asking because they genuinely are interested. They're asking because what you're saying or how the interaction is going with you is that they can't put you in a box and they feel like they can't define you. So they're starting to like kind of panic like in their head, and they don't really know, they can't put you in a specific category. So because they're not getting kind of like leading context clues about what you are, they just come out and ask. And I think that when it comes to a lot of, well, in New York, I mean, everybody's kind of immigrant from somewhere. So it's not an uncommon question to ask somebody like, what are you or where are you from? But I also kind of think that is weird. Like if we're having a regular conversation about something that's completely general and you just come out the woodwork and ask me where I'm from, which is usually how it is, I know that you're asking me that because you are trying to like kind of you're just kind of basically trying to categorize me. You're not asking me because you're just genuinely irritated. You're genuinely interested, because I highly doubt that you're going around asking other white American women, "What are you?" Like, you're not asking them that. You're asking me this because you think I'm some type of foreign immigrant who's gonna give you a funny, interesting story about how my family came over here on a banana boat or something. Like, you're not, and you're also not expecting me to give you a boring story about how I'm African American either. And usually I only give them that part just to disappoint them. Not even disappoint them, but just to be like, mind your business. Like, you know what I mean? But you're clearly not expecting that either, because why would you even ask? But anyway, do we care about reading this part? Racially ambiguous people are also allies to POC groups. I don't really know if I care about reading this part. Yeah, let's just read the last two sections. So the last two, and then I'm gonna wrap it up because I know I'm gonna be dead in the morning. But anyway, so the last second to last part, she talks about the unique life experiences of racially ambiguous people. So she says, stories of all different ways racial ambiguity leads to unique life experiences can be found on social media by monoracials and mixed people alike. It is a common occurrence for racially ambiguous people to be spoken to in languages that they are presumed to know but don't. This is because people from different ethnic groups are in various countries may recognize them as one of their own. A person may be spoken to in Spanish, Arabic, Hebrew, Hindu, and more. And see, this is why I made my collage the way that it did. So I'm gonna leave that picture of those beautiful people up there while I read. And like I said, a lot of these people on here are Middle Eastern. Some of them are part Asian. Some of them are part Hispanic. They speak different languages. Some of them are American, different things. So when all of these people look similar and look like they could be from the same country or same group or something like that, that is definitely a great example of racial ambiguity, because you genetically do not know where these people's ancestors could possibly come from. They all look like they could even be in the same family or from the same country or something like that, but they're clearly not. Um, and so if the Arab woman came and talked to Meghan Markle in her language, and Meghan Markle's like, I'm not Middle Eastern, like, why would you think that? Like, you know what I mean? But she's like, oh, you look like my group, like, because they kind of look similar. Like, it's just kind of, yeah, it's just kind of is what it is and things like that. But I kind of find that interesting too. Like, but yeah, so anyway, so I read that part, and so then she goes on to say a person, oh yeah, maybe spoken to in Hebrew, Hindi, and more. This is a complex situation because a racially ambiguous person may feel disappointment when sharing that the native speaker that they don't know the language and aren't from their community. Because racially ambiguous people are often asked the question, what are you, which is an inappropriate way to ask for information about somebody's racial background or ethnic background. Let me repeat that for the white people and the black people who like to overstep boundaries in the back. What are you is an inappropriate way to ask information about somebody's racial and ethnic background. What are you is an inappropriate way to ask information about somebody's racial and ethnic background, simply because it's not your fucking business. If I don't provide to you, be off my own fruition, what my racial background is not your business. I don't care for you to know. Period. It's not your business. You should not go asking people around people, what are you? Now, if you're just trying to make conversation, if y'all having light banter and y'all sharing that, that's great. But if you more adamant to know what I am before I give a shit about what you are, that tells me something about you. Because I don't go around asking random monoracial people, what are they? Not because I'm not interested in their culture or lived experiences or life story, but I'm just not trying to be nosy and I'm not trying to speculate in their genetics. You're trying to be nosy and speculate about my genetics and stereotype me properly because you can't tell what type of black woman I am. So because I'm making you uncomfortable because I'm not fitting any of your stereotypes, you're trying to fit me into a box. So you're not slick. I know what you're doing. You're not just asking that question benevolently. And a lot of times, I'm just gonna be honest with you, for mixed people, people are not genuinely asking just because they're just being benevolent. Some people are, but a lot of people are asking so they can judge you and put and stereotype you a certain way. They're asking for their own mental health and for their own security. They're not asking because they're genuinely interested in what you are. They're asking so they can kind of like make their self feel less uncomfortable. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be excited to tell people what you are, you shouldn't be proud of what you are, or anything like that. But that's just what I've noticed a lot of times. I'm just being honest. But anyway, so then she goes on to say, this can lead to more self-reflection than the average person might overwise embark on and work through in their life. Sometimes people are more convinced that an ambiguous person is of their race that they don't even believe that the person when they don't even believe the person when informed that they are not. Most people in life don't have to convince others that they are the race or races that they are, but this is frequently a frequent occurrence for racially ambiguous people. Due to occupying an in between space in society, racially ambiguous people may not have a built in community or camaraderie with strangers of their race. Within their families, they can look different than other members, and if they have two monoracial parents of different races, their own parents won't be able to resonate with their experiences. Increasing Increased exposure to racially ambiguous people can help lessen the tendency to view race as purely in terms of black and white categories. One study found that seeing more racially ambiguous people reduces essentialist monolithic views of race. In other words, seeing faces that don't clearly belong to one race helps them develop a more flexible idea of race. And I definitely agree. I feel like growing up in New York City definitely has impacted my view of race. I'm sure people probably feel like on here, like, oh, she's a one dropper. Oh, she calls people black who are mixed. Oh, she does this and that. Oh, she includes Hispanics in her commentary. Oh my God, she talks about Middle East. La, la, la. They probably feel that way in their head. I haven't heard people say that about me, but I'm sure there are some people who do feel that way. But yeah, I grew up in a very multicultural city and in a kind of low-key multicultural like household also, so that's going to shape my experience and my perception of the world. And I grew up around a lot of people who are very racially undefinable, and a lot of people of color from other countries who didn't really grow up or were raised with a strong concept of race in that way. So I kind of grew up with both mentalities where like I kind of saw an international perspective on like quote unquote race and ethnicity, but I also got an American perception of it as well. So I kind of understand like both worldviews and I kind of combine both. Oh, excuse me, that was a nasty burp. But anyway, so this is the final paragraph. And so she says, keep in mind, chances are you've encountered racially ambiguous people before. You may have presumed them to be of one race, mixed race, or never give a thought about it at all. What the information you now have, you can begin to have a deeper understanding of the experiences of racially ambiguous people. Racial ambiguity is becoming progressively more common and in an important experience to understand. Working with mixed race individuals who may not appear racially ambiguous is an important topic for further exploration. Very well liked very well would like to thank Jennifer Noble for her significant contributions in reviewing this article. Dr. Noble is a licensed psychologist, parental coach, associate professor of psychology and speaker in Los Angeles, California. She works with mixed race people, parents of mixed race kids, women of color, and marginalized groups. Oh, that's awesome. So definitely gonna take her name down. I would definitely recommend y'all checking this woman out and looking up her work. I'm sure she has social media, especially if you are a parent of mixed children or you're a parent yourself or whatever the case may be. I definitely would recommend looking into this woman. Hopefully she's a woman of color too or black or something, most likely. But yeah, I think that's awesome. I'm literally writing down her name right now. Definitely make sure y'all look her up. Sorry, I literally took a screenshot. Um, but yeah. So I think I'm gonna wrap the stream up from there. Um, yeah. I think I'm gonna wrap it up. Do I want to show this article? Let me quickly show this little article I wanted to. I kind of want to also briefly touch on like the difference between like racially ambiguous and white passing. I kind of talked about that earlier, but not as much. And I might, like I said, I might do a whole. Should I just do a whole different stream on this? I kind of said what I wanted to say though. Yeah, let's just look at the article. Fuck it. Fuck it. Fuck it. Sorry, let me actually respond to some of these comments because you made some good comments in the chat, Irby. So Irby says Halle Berry and Meghan Markle are calling their kids black, shaking my head, shaking my head. Yeah, exactly. Like that's just unfair to your child. Like, come on now. Like, if your 30%, 25% black child grows up and, wants to identify as mixed or biracial or even black, whatever, that is their personal choice. That has nothing to do with me, mama, society, nothing else. But I feel like you, especially as a directly first generation mixed person, like calling yourself black, and then especially Meghan Markle, like which I felt like she was pretty like aware as a biracial woman. So I didn't know that. Like I thought she of all people would call her kids like mixed or whatever. I'm not even saying to call your kids white. Like I don't even think you should say that. Like I was saying that, tongue in cheek, but I don't even think it's fair for to call them white because in a lot of spaces they're even unless they look like my white German biracial friend, unless they straight up actually look like an actual white person, a person like Meghan Markle is not going to live a white experience. So I'm not even saying that you should say that to your kid either, because that's not fair either. I mean, Meghan Markle's kids, from what I've seen, they kind of look like they could maybe go as white, but I wouldn't even recommend that. But at the same time, if they grow up and they live their lives, because I've seen that too. I personally know people who have biracial parents and they pretty much live they it's not that they reject their black ancestry, but they pretty much live their life as a white person because they know they're perceived in society as being white. They know that they're mixed race and they have black ancestry, but they pretty much live their life that way because that's what they are. Just like a lot of mixed people who will look black, they pretty much live their life as black, not because they hate their white side, not because they're ashamed of being mixed race, but because they just know that this is the society they live in and that's how shit is set up. Like it's not, but again, it's not your job to shape your identity around what society thinks or what society wants of you or what society's expectation of you is. So I'm not saying that also, but I think that just in general, monoracial, mixed, or whatever, if you're going to make a biracial kid, you should try your best to be as honest with the information that you have about society. You should be as honest as you can with them. That doesn't mean candy coating shit. That doesn't mean completely gloom and dooming shit either. Or, scaring them about race and telling them all this negative stuff. I'm not saying that either. Just like being balanced, but like, come on now. All these mixed people calling their mostly white children black or mixed, like you're just doing your kid a disservice, and you're doing your kid a disservice because you be crying about the way people treat you and the experiences you had. So I don't really understand what you anyway, I'm I can't. And then Irby also say, like, I might have to do a whole live just about that. But Irby also said, um, it's crazy as it sounds, it's become an issue you get older because they think you're getting privilege, whether economic or dating, especially if you're a woman. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And that's kind of the really weird thing to me about this conversation. It's like you would think like the whole like light skin, dark skin thing that would be like schoolyard banter. Like that would be like high school bullshit. But like people really start to think about it when it comes to jobs, economics, trying to get a man or whatever. Like it really is interesting. And then when you have people out here brainwashing each other about these topics, that really don't help. Like that, yeah, it's really interesting. But I would have never thought that this would be an issue as an adult, and nobody prepared me. Ain't nobody told me nothing. Like nobody told me that being a light-skinned adult woman would be like this. As many women in my family, just to give y'all an idea, basically all the women in my family either look like me or like Kamala Harris, or like they're like brown skinned women and stuff like that. They never told me about none of this nonsense. So nobody prepared me or anything. And that's why I was talking about earlier. I was saying that a lot of mixed and light skinned people are not pre-prepared for a lot of the racial stuff you're gonna have to deal with growing up, and are not set in like in a are not set up with a specific conscience to be able to tackle these issues. You kind of just go out in the world willy-nilly. Like sometimes your parents or people might talk to you about being black and like about police brutality and racialization and things like that. But even then that still could mess you up, because you go into the world thinking you're perceived in one way, or thinking life is going to be the world's going to see you in one way, and then you get a rude awakening when you're dealing with all this light skin bullshit, and then you're like, wait a minute. But you told me for so long to not talk about that part of myself, whatever. It's just, it can be really confusing. But yeah, even though like I had two black parents, they never talked to me about like issues like this or anything. And even though they bought me books and like books about being black and like black dolls and things like that, like they never had a conversation with me like about race, or like sat down and talked to me about police brutality. Like a lot of I hear a lot of brown skin and dark skin people saying that their parents did that with them, and like my parents never did that. I mean, I'm just going on a tangent, but my parents never really told me like, "Oh, the world's gonna perceive you this way, or these things can happen," or anything. Like, they just kind of told me, "Yeah, you're black," and I just kind of went about it like that. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent. But then Herb Kirby also asks, speaking of dating, have you ever dated brown or even light skinned men? Because there's a stigma that mixed or light skinned women with dark skinned dudes. Yeah, I've talked about in other videos how most of the black men I dated were all like light skinned men, mixed men, like Afro Latinos. Like, yeah, that's who I mostly dated up until like relatively recently in my life. Like growing up, that's usually always who I had crushes on and who I was dating, stuff like that. And I actually have another video that I already recorded where I'm gonna talk about that. But yeah, I've definitely mostly dated them. I have a lot of experiences with them. I'll just say that I have some stories. So yeah, but I've also dated brown skin and dark skin men too when I was younger and things like that. Most of the brown skin and dark skin men I dated though were African, so that doesn't make a huge difference. But I don't know, maybe it kind of does. But yeah, that's kind of been my experience. um but yeah, I do have a video coming out about that soon. At this point it's no point in even bringing up the article because it was just kind of like pictures, but I'm like low-key tired. But I think it's still like kind of interesting. I'm just gonna briefly go through this article just to top this topic off. But yeah, Irby, if you want to hear about some of my dating experience, you might have to. I don't even talk about my dating experiences, but me talking about that, it's more in my earlier videos. I haven't talked about it that much in a while, but yeah, I've mentioned before, like in other videos, how growing up people would give me a hard time about dating light skinned men, and like to this day, I have people in my life that troll me about that. Like if it's any type of light skin dude around, they be like, "Oh, you're probably gonna think he's cute, or you might want to talk to him." It's like, bro, I don't think every light skin nigga is cute. I don't just randomly date light skin niggas because they're light skin. I'm not like you where I choose niggas based on skin tone. Okay. If anything, the only color I choose men off of is green. The fuck. Anyway, that's the only skin color I care about. As long as the man is green, shit, that's what I give a fuck about. Anyways. Let me tell you something. A dude being light skinned, a dude being dark skinned, a dude having waves, a dude having dreads, that's not gonna keep the lights on. So y'all keep choosing dudes over vanity and appearances, like you choose, like they choose bad bitches, and see how that turns out for you. Cause a dude being cute, a dude having waves, a dude being brown skin ain't gonna keep the lights on. Okay, ain't gonna be a good father. Okay, character over color. Anyway. So yeah, as y'all can see, this article is 27 celebs who were widely assumed to be white but aren't. And so I'm only briefly sharing this because there's, like I said earlier, there's a huge misconception between white passing and racially ambiguous. I think that racially ambiguous and white passing are two completely different lived experiences within mixedness, within light skinnedness or whatever you want to call it. Very different experiences. A racially ambiguous person will still face racism for being a person of color, for obviously being a non-white person. A person who's presumed to be white, because I don't really like the term white passing, because white passing, I feel like it has the same stigma as racially ambiguous, to where it's like you're kind of automatically projecting onto this person that they're trying to be dishonest or not being completely clear about their race, when just because you cannot tell what somebody is does not mean that they're intentionally misrepresenting their race, because it's other people's job to identify themselves. It's not your job to keep tabs on who's what race. Like that, it's not your business. So I feel like white passing and a mixed person who is white presenting, and I got this term from other mixed people who were white passing and racially ambiguous. I think I have that video linked in my white presenting experience playlist. So go check that out. And I'll add this video to that playlist also. Um, and I'll probably link it in the description box. But yeah, that is definitely a whole experience. And I got that term from somebody on TikTok. So shout out to them. But anyway, so a few of these that surprised me was like Jackie Kennedy. Like I've never heard that Jackie Kennedy was of African descent or had mixed ancestry. I'm definitely gonna have to look into that. I mean, just by this picture, all I'm gonna say is that the skin is skinning and the freckles are freckling. That's all Imma say. So, I haven't done my own research on this. This could be true, it could not be true. I don't see why it wouldn't be true. I just have never heard this before, but I mean, y'all see the picture. I don't know, like, sis is giving very much so red bone auntie, so I don't know. I don't know. It's definitely giving sister. Like, let me find out. But anyway, so then the next person is Darnell Martin. So I feel like this is an excellent example of a white passing mixed person, because to me, she looks like she could either be like Hispanic, maybe Middle Eastern, definitely Italian, some type of like kind of spicy white-ish. But walking down the street, I would not automatically assume that, oh, she is Italian. Okay, cool. Funny. See? Look how right I am. But anyway, I'm right about everything. Let me stop. But yeah, walking in the street, I wouldn't automatically assume that she was part black. Now, I will say, to me, she does kind of look mixed. Like she looks white also, but she also does kind of look mixed to me. So it goes kind of both ways. I feel like a lot of this is up for interpretation. I'm not gonna comment on this one because this is a painting. So again, that's up for interpretation. So we're just gonna scroll that past that. Not even speak on that. And then we have Jennifer Beals. So she's a great example again of somebody who is white passing. I guess she's biracial. I always heard speculations that Jennifer Beal was biracial, but I never like, honestly, I never did any research about it, but I don't have any reason to like not believe her. I mean, if she says she's biracial, I take what she says. I don't do that to mix people where I try to invalidate them. But yeah, another great example of a white passing person, and this is what I feel like is an example of an actual white passing woman. Like, if I saw Jennifer Beal, I would never know she had any black ancestry, or I thought she would be like a one drop black. I'm just gonna be honest with you. Like, if she said, "Oh, I have black ancestry," like I wouldn't think it was anything recent, honestly. But she's biracial, so yeah, I'd want to see what her African American parent looks like. So I'm gonna just leave that there. I'd like to see what what her African American father looks like. Because I would not be surprised if Jennifer Beals' African American father looks just like the African American father from the woman who wrote the other article. So do with that information as you will. And then I've never heard of this actor, but he's from Riverdale. I never watched that show. I was too busy living life and crashing out at that time. So I didn't watch this show, but he's actually cute too. But yeah, I would have never known he was biracial. This guy Clark Gabriel, um I've never heard of him. Apparently, I guess he has Native American ancestry, so I'm not sure if he's like an American, what I call an American mestizo, which is basically a half indigenous American, half white. I don't know, but that's how it looks to me, just based on this caption. And also, if you look at him, to me, he looks obviously mestizo. Like he looks like a straight up like Mexican or Ecuadorian guy to me. Like I would never look at this guy and think he was straight up white. Like maybe Italian. I keep saying Italian because that's like the only group of spicy white people that I know. But otherwise, to me, he looks Hispanic. He does not look white. That's just me. And then my man. Let me stop. Wentworth Miller, classic example. Um, Clearly he has black ancestry. I think wait, what does it say? It says one of Miller's early acting roles, he portrayed Anthony Hopkins in Human Stain, who tried to pass himself off as a black man. Miller actually has a black father and a white mother, so the role might have not been hard for the actor to relate to. LOL. Yeah. Again, I want to see what his black father looks like too. Just like we can go look at Logic's black father. I just posted a picture of him, and Logic's father, at least as dusty and trash as he is, at least he lives in reality and he can admit that he's mixed himself. But anyway, so this woman she's also biracial. She's half Asian, half white. To me, she looks Asian, but I also would see her as a white passing. Also, I probably wouldn't assume she was Asian, but she looks Asian to me. Um, he's another dude that's cute. Chris Humphries is cute. I mean, he's just dusty to me because I know too much about his relationship history. But I mean, he's cute or whatever. I would never call Chris Humphries white though. I think that that's really interesting. Like to me, Chris Humphries is not white passing at all. I would consider him to be racially ambiguous, but I would not consider him to be white passing. But that's just me. He's this is gonna sound bad, but to me, he's too dark to be white passing. Like, I don't think a white person would ever look at him and genuinely think he's white. Like, I don't think that white people would ever perceive him as white. Not only does he have like brown skin and he's clearly a person of color, he also has like curly hair and like his nose is giving person of color. I don't know. He just doesn't I wouldn't consider him white passing. That's just me. Um And then this guy, usually I don't like to talk about this conversation when it comes to mixed people, when it comes to black and white pictures, because I feel like black and white pictures, especially when it comes to like how they used to do their hair and like edit pictures back in the day, it can be really misleading. So like there'll be a lot of mixed people who have like significant African ancestry or like are straight up light skinned black people, but you can look at their picture from like the 1950s or something and it's black and white and they literally look like a white person. But then if you saw them in person, you know that they don't really look like that. Like I have a lot of family members who their old pictures, they literally look like a white person or a non-black person, but I know in person that they have like very brown skin or they don't look as light skinned as they do in the picture. So a lot of old pictures are really like they can really play with mixed people's features and really like change the way that they look. So I don't really like gauging mixedness based on old pictures. But this guy, I could definitely see how he would be perceived as white passing because it seems like he has maybe like Creole parents or something from Louisiana, and then he in the North was perceived as white. So I thought that that was really interesting. And then the woman who originated the Betty Boop character, she was Afro mixed race, I believe. Um and then Maya Rudolph, classic example. And even I could even see some people saying that to me, Maya Rudolph doesn't look straight up white either. Now, I definitely would consider her white passing, at least in the United States and even in Latin America. In Latin America, they would definitely see her as white. But at the same time, I kind of have a similar feeling about her about as I do towards Chris Humphrey. Like I feel like her skin is like kind of dark compared to a white person. Like especially if she gets a tan and I can assume like she probably spends a lot of time in California. Like, I don't know. And if she let her hair curl up, like if Maya Rudolph was to put on an afro right now, would she still be white passing? Or would she just look like a very light skinned biracial woman that she actually is? So, Maya Rudolph can go either way. I think that she definitely can be white passing, but I also think to me that she looks very mixed also. And that if she was to wear her hair curly and she was like to get a tan, people would obviously know like she's not white. This is a great example of an actual white passing person, Pete Waltz. I'm sorry, Pete Wentz. I think he passed away too, so RIP to him if he actually is dead. But yeah, I think Pete Wentz. From Fallout Boy. I love that band too. Shout out to them. I absolutely love Fallout Boy. Yeah, he's actually half black, and I was really surprised about that. But yeah, that's a great example of an actual white passing person. Look at how different he looks than Chris Humphries. You mean to tell me Chris Humphries and Pete Wentz walk into a bar, right? Which one is going to be perceived as the white guy and which one's going to be perceived as the Hispanic guy, even though they're both biracial? So anyway, next person is I forget where I know this guy from, but I know his face. So apparently he's of indigenous Maori blood while also Irish, Russian, and Jewish. To me, he looks Maori. Honestly, like I don't even no disrespect to him, but I don't even know why he's on this list because the title of the list is people who are assumed to be white. I don't know in what country, century, state, anywhere he would ever be perceived as white. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong. This man looks like a straight up Maori man. To me, he looked like he just ran off some Pacific island. To me, I can see that he's mixed, like he has like European blood also, but to me he looks indigenous. He looks like The Rock, and to me, The Rock is not white passing. So it just depends on your interpretation. Because to me, this man looks very indigenous. So I don't know. He doesn't look white to me. That's just me though. Michael Frosberg. This guy's biracial too. Rashida Jones. Now I think Rashida Jones is more white passing than Maya Rudolph. Now people can disagree, it's whatever. But I don't know. For something about Rashida Jones looks very European, as where to me Maya Rudolph, something about her kind of gives away obviously biracial. I don't know. It's something. I think it's her facial structure that Rashida Jones's facial structure that makes her look more like her European side. As where skin color wise, I feel like they're kind of in the same range. Like I feel like Rashida Jones has kind of like a darker skin tone also, but like when she wears her hair and like kind of stays out the sun, like then she can kind of pass for like maybe a white Hispanic woman or maybe like some type of like woman from like the Levant or like Middle East or something like that, or even like Southern Europe. But otherwise, to me, she could be definitely considered white passing. Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter, I don't know in what country, state, century, wherever, where Derek Jeter be considered white passing or assumed to be white. Like, come on now. Like, come on now. If anything, people would just assume that he's Hispanic. Like, they would just assume he's Dominican or something. Like, I can't see people genuinely thinking Derek Jeter is white. I'm sorry. I just cannot believe that. Just like I cannot believe anybody would think Rosario Dawson is white. I cannot believe that. I just don't believe that. I'm sorry. Like now, do I am I saying that people would necessarily automatically call them black or Afro Latino? I'm not saying that either. But let's be real here. To me, they do look Afro Latino. But that's just me. That's just me. If I saw them, I would actually think they're Afro Latino, honestly. I wouldn't assume that they're biracial. I mean, she actually is Afro Latino, but you get my point. Or Afro Latina, you get my point. But um, I wouldn't perceive them as being white in any. I don't think any American or anybody from the Americas would perceive them as being white. I don't think Derek Jeter would be perceived as white anywhere. This woman might be perceived as white in maybe parts of Africa or maybe in the Middle East or something. But to me, I don't think she looks white at all. I would never perceive her as white. I don't think in the United States she would ever be perceived as white. Maybe in a different country. And same thing for Derek Jeter. I don't know. Maybe he would in another country too. I can't see it. And maybe I'm a little biased because I've seen Derek Jeter in person. He does not look white, so I don't know. Slash, one of my favorite examples. He's kind of cute too. I don't know. It's something about Slash. He's kind of attractive. But Slash is a classic example too. I mean, the hair is a dead giveaway. Like, come on now. The hair is a dead giveaway. Like, we don't see much of his face, so I gotta see how all the features come together. But just by the darkness of the skin in this picture and the way the hair be hairing, he might be assumed or presumed to be white just because of the nature of the type of music he plays. But I feel like walking down the street, like day to day, nobody would perceive Slash as being white. Okay, it's like I forgot it's 27 examples on here, so I don't got all night to be doing this. But this woman is another excellent example of somebody who is um white passing, because to me she does look like she does look like a straight up white woman. I would never assume that she was part black, but if you look at the hair, look at her hair, like it looks almost type 4 to me. So the hair is a dead giveaway. The hair and the noses, those be a dead giveaway for mixed people. So I feel like if she was to wear her hair in its natural state, because it looks like she does have like type 4 kinky hair, I don't know for sure, but it looked like she do. I feel like people would be able to obviously tell that she's biracial, but depending on how she wears her hair, whatever, that might change how they're perceived. Let me know if y'all want me to do a whole video about just how changing your hair really impacts how you're perceived as a mixed person, and why in a lot of mixed cultures, specifically like Hispanic culture, the whole hair thing is like a huge deal. And it's a huge deal, in my opinion. This is my opinion. The whole hair thing is a huge deal for mixed people, because the way you wear your hair can really determine and change like how you're perceived and treated in society. And for a long time in the like 1900s or early 2000s, and things like that, in the 20th century, I'm the 1900s, bitch, that's the 1800s. In the in the 20th century, and in like the early 2000s and stuff like that, the way your hair was could really impact how people treated you. And I feel like a lot of mixed people, because they knew that as like kind of like a survival response, the whole like hair thing and having your hair a certain way really became a big deal for a lot of like MGM or like Latin groups and stuff like that. And like I can personally speak on this. I have multiple times on YouTube. But I feel like that is why a lot of mixed people are so like kind of obsessed with their hair. And honestly, I feel like texturism is actually way bigger of an issue amongst mixed people than colorism is. Now, colorism is definitely a thing amongst mixed people too. Don't get me wrong. I was raised and grew up in a Hispanic neighborhood. I already know. The it's definitely a thing. I've even experienced it, and it has to do with it in my life, so I'm not denying that. But at the same time, I dealt with way more issues and way more disrespect and negative treatment because of my hair than I ever did because of my skin color. Now, granted, yes, I am light skinned, so that could play a role into it too, because I also do benefit from colorism. Even though to Hispanic people, I'm not seen as a light skinned person, I'm seen as a brown skinned person. But I do still benefit from colorism, so that's true also. So my experience may be limited or biased in that regard, but that's just what I noticed growing up, especially even from like African Americans too. When people are mixed, I feel like the whole hair thing is a huge deal. And that's something your family will project on you, older family members, things like that. And the whole hair thing, and then being overly concerned with how you wear your hair, it's a big thing. And I even said in my video, my most recent video about texturism, where I was saying that my family wasn't really colorist at all. They never talked about race or anything, but they definitely were texturist about hair, and definitely hyper obsessed and focused on hair. Now, this could be just my experience, or just, me speaking from my trauma. But I've also talked to like other Hispanic friends and things like that. And they told me the same thing, and that their parents were the same way about their hair and very obsessive and weird about it, and that they noticed that even in their countries the same way. So And I'm sure for Creoles and things like that, I'm sure it's the same thing also. So if there are any like Creoles or any other type of MGM, definitely let me know. Tell me if that's been your experience also. Because I am interested and I will do a video on it if I feel like it's worth it. But anyway, this video has been very long. I mean, it's not long. I just feel tired because I've had a long day. But anyway, I appreciate you guys for staying up with me and tuning in to this live. Again, there will be more comment, more content, more live streams coming in relation to this topic regarding the experience of racially undefinable people. So this is not the ending of this topic, just I guess you could say the beginning of a new chapter, in the sense that I'm just going to be talking about this more and like more different topics, and got some new equipment, and going to be doing some new releases, like launches for you guys soon, so that there's more content opportunities and some special stuff also. So that will be premiering and like launching soon. So definitely keep an eye out for that. I'm so tired at this point. I'm just like rambling. Let me check the chat, see if there are any more comments. Thanks again so much to Irby for always participating in the chat. I really appreciate that. And anybody else who likes to tune in, don't be scared of me. Please say something in the chat. I do not bite. Talk nice to me in the chat along with Irby. But I always appreciate your support, Irby. Just wanted to say that. So anyway, you guys have a good night. I'll catch you in the next live podcast or video. Bye-bye.